Now that's significant. The Market Research Podcast.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on this latest episode of Now That's Significant, a market research podcast. This is your host Michael Howard, the head of marketing at Infotools. Today we're joined by Will Leach, founder and CEO of Mindstate Group, a behavioral research and brand consultancy and best-selling author of Marketing to Mindstates, a practical guide to applying behavioral design to research and marketing. With over 25 years of behavioral insights experience, Will is widely regarded as the world's leading expert on subconscious mind state research and consults with today's most innovative businesses to increase the effectiveness of their marketing using behavioral science. Will is also a behavioral design instructor at SMU's Cox School of Business, BLC, and the Texas A&M Human Behavior Lab. Will has a podcast called the Mindstate Marketing Hour, which was voted Market Research Podcast of the Year 2022. So we have royalty with us today.
Take that. That's right, Michael.
So congrats on that one, and thanks for joining us on the show, Will.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm appreciative of the time and looking forward to our conversation today.
You're quite all right. You're quite welcome. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey and your story behind starting the Mindstate Group?
Yeah, it goes back. I can't believe how long I've been in the industry now. About 25 years I've been in research, but I didn't start off actually as a marketing researcher. I was actually, originally I was a U.S. soldier. I was an engineer in the U.S. Army, and I was smart enough to realize that if you're going to do that with your life, you want to become an officer. So I got out as an enlisted soldier and went to college. And it took me about a semester in college before I realized, Mike, I am not going to go back into the military. So I didn't know what I wanted to do because I thought I was going to be an officer. But I walked in on a marketing research class on accident, pretty much. A professor told me to go do it. And I fell in love with the field of marketing research. I could not believe that there was an industry out there that was tasked with understanding human behavior, right? So I fell in love with it. And I started the traditional marketing research roles, right? I was on the client side and biotech, energy, found my way over to PepsiCo, where I ran innovation insights for Frito-Lay, which is, the chip manufacturer. I did brand insights for a couple brands. I did shopper insights, just the traditional marketing research roles. But back in around 2007, Pepsi started really investing in behavioral sciences. I mean, we started bringing on neuroscientists on staff, cultural anthropologists, and we had a laboratory that we built out of a small shopping center. And this laboratory was just one of the normal roles that anybody has, right? I was running this laboratory. I didn't know much about behavioral science, but I talk about in my book, I had a piece of research go wrong. And I won't go into the big details of it, but basically I did an A/B test. But then my variables did not change between my two conditions. You can appreciate this, but yet the results changed. And so I ran the same test exactly the same way. My results changed. So I tried to cover it up. If I'm honest with you, I'm like, I can't tell, that's not good, right? I need to understand what's going on. But the word got out. And then all of a sudden I had a vice president say, well, if you're telling me that you ran one test and you got a result, you ran the exact same test, got a different result, and you can't tell me which test is correct. We're spending $20 million a year on this laboratory. This is not a good investment. So I didn't know what to do. I was an economist. I didn't take sociology, psychology, took none of those courses in school, but I started reading a bunch of books. If you guys see behind me, I started reading books, and brother, I fell in love. And I started reading about behavioral economics with Dan Ariely's work. And then from there, I went into motivational psychology, and then I went into regulatory fit. I just couldn't stop thinking. I stopped playing golf. I stopped playing stopped watching football. All I could do, I was that weirdo who would go to the beach with a bunch of different academic papers because I could not believe how much great science was happening out in academia. But yet the field that I loved, marketing research, this is early on, right? This is like 2007, 2008. Nobody was using this stuff. So it's the classic. I fell in love with my industry. And right when you love your job, because I was running this behavioral laboratory, they want to put me on a critical experience, right? They're moving me on to another role. And I was being kind of courted to go up to Chicago and work on Quaker Oats. And I was like, man, I'm okay with oatmeal, but I'm not leaving Dallas and I'm not leaving this. So I started my company very early on, 2012. And for the last, 10 years now, almost 11 years, I've been exclusively focused on understanding non-conscious drivers of human behavior, and then helping companies all over the world use those factors to optimize their marketing.
Very nice. So, quick question for you then: if you had the chance to do those two experiments again, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. So here's what happened. We were doing package testing. So what we do is we'd have 75 people come into this laboratory. It looked like a grocery store, right, Michael? I mean, we had checkout clerks, other shoppers that we hired as actors. What we would do is we would do like a real in-field, very contextual piece of research. So on day one, we had the old packaging. Everyone went through it. Overnight, we're supposed to get a new shipment. I was going to flip the old packaging with new packaging, but the shipment never came in. It got lost. But the next day, I'd already pre-recruited 75 people to shop the store. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do a bigger test. My control will be 150 people. But then, like I said, an analyst looked at that data and she said, Will, like completely different results. We don't know what's going on. That's why I was like, whoa, like we can't have that. We need to go figure it out. So I didn't hide the results. I was like, we need to delay those results. Here's what we found out. We found out that on day one, the hostess who would welcome people in, she was the person who hosted these studies all the time. She knew not to talk about the science behind it or anything else. So most people thought we were just an academic institution. She called in sick, so we had a temporary hostess come in. She, as people came in, talked about the experiment, said, "Oh, you're going to love this. We have cameras that are set up to watch how you shop, and we're going to be able to." She didn't tell us. She didn't say the exact brands, but she created so much more context. So looking back, what we should have done was controlled that one variable that I thought was controllable. It wasn't. It was how somebody was greeted when they entered into the facility. But because of that, Michael, it introduced me to this world that I love today. So I mean, I'm very grateful for this big mistake, because I would be just some vice president in marketing research on a client or maybe on a supplier side, but instead I get to live my passion every day.
Awesome. Nice. So thanks for that. So with that background, what is the most significant thing you're going to tell us today, which we'll spend some time unpacking?
Yeah, I have been living in this world of behavioral sciences for a long time and the impact of marketing research. So I believe that behavioral science and marketing research is the most important thing that we should be pushing in marketing research. I say that because I love it, of course. So I'm going to talk about how you can apply behavioral research to do what's called a brand restage. And we can restage the perceptions of your brand in the minds of your customers for exponential growth. So we're going to talk about how to restage brands using behavioral science.
Okay, and I'm assuming Mindstates are a part of that. So can you tell us a little bit about what they are and why they're important to research and marketing?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, as you read more and more about behavioral sciences, you realize that we make decisions in the moment. We have belief systems, we have attitudes, we have preferences, we have wants, needs, desires, all those things. But based upon how we're feeling, who's around us, the environment around us, we have these moments in time where our beliefs adjust, our preferences adjust. We're kind of more malleable than you think. So the classic thing you would realize, Mike, is let's say if you go grocery shopping, you probably have a set list of products and brands that you go and shop for all the time. But if you take that same grocery trip and you're hungry, you haven't eaten in 8 or 9 hours, you'll buy donuts maybe, or maybe you'll buy things that you wouldn't normally buy. These moments where kind of you have emotional arousal, that's called a mind state. So mind states are these moments in time. You would know it as a hot state. And when you're in a hot state, you're much more susceptible to influence because you're using emotional processing. You're using system one, non-conscious drivers, right? A mind state is not a personality profile. It's not a segmentation. It's a moment in time. And I focus on these moments in time where the environment, your physiological, your biology, your sociology, all these environmental things come together to influence you. And when you understand the mind state that your customer's under in a moment of time, you would overlay this on top of anything you're doing, right? Any segmentation you have, any needs-based occasion work you're having, whatever, it'll tell you how to message differently. When I mean message, I mean what visuals you should be using, what emotions you should be talking to, what copy you should be using, how do you frame your benefits, what's your narrative strategy. All this stuff can help you really maximize the potential of your brand. So mind states are moments in time, and I study those moments in time.
Very nice. So curious then, so we obviously have a lot of market researchers listening to this, and they'll often be doing their various forms of methodologies. Have you ever looked into mind states in terms of what survey design and etc. as well? So what we should be, or how we should be trying to target people when they're in certain mind states?
Yeah, I have. So I started in my world was qualitative research. So not survey design, qualitative research. So what you have to do to understand a mind state, two things have to happen. One is you have to try to get somebody in the moment of a decision. So as best you can to the real context. So when we do research around toilet paper, brother, I'm in bathrooms, right? When we do paper towels, I'm in kitchens. So first off, you got to get context because that stuff matters, right? Just like I talked about that experiment that went wrong. Second thing you have to do is something called projective techniques, right? So you would know projective technique. You have to get somebody out of their rational thinking. So there's lots of different ways of doing projective techniques. We use collage disaggregation and sorting exercises. We've all been doing that forever. What happened a couple of years ago was I had my biggest client out there as a financial institution. They said, we love this qualitative work, but we need to drop these insights into quantitative service. We can't wait 6 weeks to do our work anymore. Those days are over. So how do you get, how do you identify mind states using quantitative tools? There are two ways to do it. One way is implicit association. I don't do that. That's not my methodology, but you could technically do implicit association, guys. I could identify core motivations, and a mind state is built upon core motivations plus a regulatory approach. You can read more about it in the book. But you could do implicit association to identify motivations, no problem. That's not what I do. I actually use unstructured text. Like when people talk, you and I having a conversation, Michael, if I was really super smart, every time you told me something, I would be able to, if I was super smart, I would be able to tell what mind state you're in by the words you use. So what I can do is collect open-ended questions and run them through an AI model. And then through these different tells, if I ask the right questions, and I've got it down now to 2 to 3 open-ended questions, that I have a pretty high predictability of the mind state you're under when you're making a decision. It's super easy. Like it's the normal questions you would ask anyone, right? Say, what's important to you as it relates to making this decision? So first you have to talk about, whatever the context is of the decision. If you think about the cereals you eat every morning, tell me what's important to you when you're making cereal and breakfast for your child. Cool. The next open-ended question, I say, collectively, why are those things important to you? So I just ladder them up. Now, if I can get people to keep talking, because I can have a third question too. Well, what does that say about you as it relates to whatever? So I can ask, if I can get people to keep talking, eventually you will give me enough of these tells, enough of these signals that a model will pick that up and it'll identify the mind state. So we use unstructured data and artificial intelligence to identify these mind states.
Nice. The why. Oh,
keep laddering. Yeah. Keep laddering. Eventually people will get there.
Yeah. Awesome. So you said just before about restaging or psychologically restaging brands in customers' minds, it can lead to exponential growth. Can you describe what a brand restage is and how researchers fit into this idea?
Yeah. So brand restaging came to me because of what happened between 2020 and say 2022. So collectively, the world shifted. We don't have to talk about this on podcasts. We know because of social influences. We had a pandemic. We had environmental things happening. We also had economic concerns. So every brand changed, whether you know this or not. Certainly, every customer changed. Like we saw collectively that security concerns elevated, regardless of where you were in the world. We saw that empowerment concerns or desire for control over our situation, our destinies, et cetera, those changed as well. So anyways, the world changed. And what happened is as we came out of that world, as we're coming out of that world in 2022, a little bit of 2023, we have identified this need for some brands that they have to restage what they mean to customers because customers have changed. Maybe their behaviors haven't changed as much. I don't know what industries, are listening. Some industries have changed dramatically. Other ones have kind of gone back. So a brand restage, or we call these psychological brand restages. So it's a marketing strategy that aims to change the way people think and feel about a brand by altering its image, its personality, or its perception in the minds of its customers. So the way I like to think about it is a way of retargeting your customers by modifying what you mean to that customer using behavioral sciences, really understanding their goals and their aspirational goals, really deeply understanding their motivations. And you give your brand a makeover, a slight tweak to your brand, and you can make it much more appealing and relevant to the people that you're trying to target.
Very, very cool. Do you have any examples that you can share with brands that have done this really well?
Yeah, I can tell you some industries for sure. And I can give you one example, I think. So I've been doing these brand restages now. Most people came out of COVID either looking at their segmentation and thinking, I don't believe my segmentation anymore, which is a reasonable argument. Or they realize that coming out of COVID or coming out of 2022, that they may have used to be the primary category leader, and now they're secondary leader. Maybe they didn't adjust correctly. They weren't able to shift into the digital world fast enough. So they've lost a lot of market share. So those are the companies that are most kind of ready for brand restages. So we've done it in financial services. We've done it in beverages. We've done brand restages in healthcare. I said financial services. We've had some really good results. This one I'll tell you about is with a builder. So it's a builder out of the Southwest in the United States. Sorry, you should know that. So I'm trying to speak to my global friends. So out in the Southwest, it's a very, very large builder called Woodside Homes. And they came to us because basically they're starting to construct homes. And what they're noticing is that their salespeople are struggling selling homes because coming out of COVID, the things that used to work, talking about square footage, price per square footage, and number of rooms, all of a sudden people are asking questions like, can I convert a room into a classroom? Or can I also convert this room? They were asking for conversions because remember, they were walking away with people in their homes. It became their restaurant, their place of worship, their school, their entertainment. It was everything, their office. So they didn't know how to deal with this. So what we had to do was do a lot of psychological research. They were a great company to figure out how do we restage their brand, and the idea that Woodside could actually create modularity, and that their homes were specifically designed to be able to mold to the conditions of your family. So as kids move back in, how can that home be kind of reconfigured and redesigned so that it fits with the new needs of the family? Or and also we had security concerns just in general, like how do we make a neighborhood safer and give more space? Because people came out of COVID thinking we need more space in public areas, right? So they're asking for, how do I make sure that my kids, when they play with other kids, are protected, right? These are the concerns that people had. So we did a brand restage where we did psychological research, understand their mind states. We understood homeowners' goals, their motivations, their regulatory approach, any cognitive biases, and we identified these mind states. But actually, more importantly is this, Mike. It's good to do a brand restage to have a greater insight into your customer. More importantly, behavioral design, the principles of behavioral science, they lend themselves to blueprints. So we designed behavioral activation blueprints, what we do, marketing blueprints. So we actually could go to Woodside, tell them how to redesign their site with these blueprints. They're like 15 to 20 page documents. They were awesome because a lot of brands, this, they'll look at your insights. They may take a nugget or two. They give it to their agency and their agency may apply some of it. Woodside was all in. So they went in, they redesigned their entire website for the look and feel and talking about some of these insights. And they've already moved that same research into their sales force, right? So now when somebody enters into a model home to look at homes, their salespeople are talking the same insight language that we learned from the Mindstate stuff. And it's even gone from that to community design. Like, how do we design communities? Where do we locate communities based upon modularity? So great example. So much that we've been on stage now for a better part of a year, and they're moving that research. They're owned by a much larger construction conglomerate, like the largest construction company in the world. They've used this idea of Mindstate and brand restaging to other companies that they own because of the results that they've seen from that research.
Yeah, nice. I actually spoke with Jason Jacobson when he was there.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's awesome. He's great. Yeah. He's one of my favorite guys now because he's so receptive to research, right? And he knows how to push it through an organization that is not used to research. That's what makes him so powerful, really.
Yeah. And yeah, he was also open for newer methodologies as well. So very cool. So taking a step back for a minute to discuss behavioral science and marketing research, how do you define behavioral science and why do you think it's so popular in our field today?
Yeah, it's one of those terms that everyone says, but there's not really a consistent definition. So I had the head of insights at Mondelez on his podcast ask me almost the identical question, right? He said, like, we all talk about it, but even within my organization, we don't know what we mean when we say it. So here's how I will define it. And this is how I define it in my book. It is using environmental, social, psychological, and even biological factors to understand, predict, and even change human behaviors. So we talked a little bit about that, but remember, my behaviors change depending on sometimes where I am. So I will behave differently if I'm in a church for a wedding than maybe I would if I'm at a bar on a Friday night, right? So behavioral science is understanding all these different dynamics that influence your attitudes, wants, needs, desires, belief systems, all that stuff that we used to always go out and try to figure out. What are the attitudes of my customer? What are their beliefs? All cool. But if you don't understand how these things shift based on where we are, you're only getting surface level insights. So the reason why it's so important is this. I remember when I shifted kind of towards my end of my career at PepsiCo, Insights was being asked to do a lot more than we ever used to be asked to do. We used to have to go collect insights. We have to bring a nugget of truth. We used to always it's like saying, what is an insight, right? We were now being tasked and held accountable to top line revenue growth. That's scary as an insights professional, right? Because I could provide great insights, I hope, but if the marketer doesn't execute correctly, or if the agency doesn't execute correctly, I could be held accountable for top line revenue growth. So think about top line revenue growth, guys. Every dollar of revenue, top line revenue anyways, is caused by a change in human behavior. By definition, it must be a change in human behavior. So if I'm being held accountable for top line revenue growth, which most people in marketing are, whether you're in insights or not, you may not think you are held accountable, you are, then you better understand human behavior. Behavioral science helps us understand human behavior. And I always say this on stage all the time, right? We as an industry, marketing researchers, are uniquely qualified to own this idea of behavioral design, of really helping brands use behavioral sciences. Why? Because we study human behavior every day. Brand managers don't do that, right? On their best day, they took a consumer behavior class in their MBA program. And some of them have been out of college for a decade, right? Agencies don't do it. They go to design schools. Now, there's a little bit more. It's a little bit different now. More and more of the sciences are making its way into marketing programs, but frankly, they're not tasked with understanding human behavior. You are as a marketing researcher. So behavioral science, why it's so popular, I believe, is that if you're being held accountable for top line revenue growth, then you sure as hell better understand how to change human behavior. I don't expect that you're going to go learn Photoshop and your Adobe suite to craft messaging, though I will talk to you in a second, I hope, about the future of insights, because I think there is a certain way we can get into that space. But if you don't understand human behavior and you can't tell your brand, here are the words you should be using, here are the visuals you should be using, you're not crafting those visuals, but you should give them at least guidelines, then you're doing your brand a disservice, because you should understand how to change human behavior, not just providing a cool insight, but how do you get somebody to buy more of something or buy it more often?
Very cool. On your website, you state a common frustration being the market research is broken. Interesting to hear why you think this is.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to my belief that if we should be held accountable for top line revenue growth, then we should also really, truly understand human behavior, not identifying the human behavior, but how to change human behavior. And in my background, I did 20 years of traditional marketing research. I had analytics groups that fell under me. What I find is that as an industry for so long, and it's actually because the tools and technologies weren't sophisticated enough to really understand how people make decisions, right? So I'm the first one to admit that investments have helped made us a better industry. But the fact of the matter is, for the vast majority of people out there doing research, we're still asking people to rate their experience on a scale of 1 to 7. We're asking people to predict after watching a commercial, do you think you were going to buy more of a product? And then here's what we do, right? We use these methodologies that ask people to think very rationally about how they're going to make a decision. But yet we know that 95% plus decisions are made not irrationally, subconsciously.
Yes.
So we know that, but we ask people to predict their future behavior. And then here's what we do. Then we take a bunch of data and we look at those results and we downplay it. We shift the data, right? We weight the data. I'm putting my air quotes. We weight the data so that it's more realistic. We never thought to ourselves, it's probably the methodology. Maybe the methodology is wrong in that if it can't really truly predict human behavior, but instead, because we didn't have the tools, we had to use normative databases to take what somebody said and then force that down. I believe that same thing, even though a lot of us are getting smarter, a lot of big brands are out there doing great things, your mid-tier brands and certainly all the businesses down the street, up and down the street in any community, they're still using SurveyMonkey, guys. They're still using questions like, will you come to my restaurant this week? How many times will you come to my restaurant this week? And we are notoriously bad at understanding and predicting our own behaviors. That's why I believe marketing research is broken. I also believe, though, that technology and smart people are starting to do some amazing things in our industry that one day we're going to reflect back and go, you know what? We are guiding and driving brands from our unique sciences. So I think we're heading in the right direction.
Okay. And you're touching on a little bit of my next question. So we do often focus on the negative, and I believe not enough on the positive. So I'd be also interested to hear what parts of the industry you think aren't broken or doing well. And then perhaps how can we learn from what we're doing well to try and bridge the gap between that which isn't?
Yeah. So when I think of research, I think of two different sets of research studies, right? We have studies and research methodologies that are good at trying to understand people's behaviors. Then we have research methodologies that help us, test something. Is this advertisement good? Does this soft drink taste good? Things like that. So if I'm going to take those two separate pieces of types of research, separate them for a minute. What I love about the first part, this idea of really understanding people, I think that what we're really getting better at is bringing in these social sciences. Like most large companies out there, tech, CPG, car manufacturers, they have somebody in behavioral sciences in those groups. That was not the case a decade ago, Michael. It just wasn't. Like when I came out, I couldn't find people to hire me, right? So I think we're getting really good there. And I also actually like agile research in that what agile research allows us to do, we may not think of it in this way, it allows us to learn iteratively quickly and thereby changing maybe the dynamics of a product or an experience, right? Which is cool. Now, we may not know why they're behaving differently, but a lot of people in agile research don't care. They're like, I don't care. I just know that I tested something, I can tweak it to make it a little bit better. I can keep tweaking something to make it better. So I like that side of it pretty well. I also like on the testing side that we're getting smarter, I think, in asking the right questions to really understand and predict human behavior. And I think where data analytics is really helping us a lot, like deep data analytics, where it helps us understand kind of all the elements that go into a decision, which would be all the social media things that people are seeing, all the touch points, collectively analyzing all that information to be able to predict an outcome. I think we're getting a little bit better at that as well. So those things coming behind, understanding human behavior, and then data analytics that helps us measure what's really important and how important are these different touch points. I think that's a great place for us to take our industry. So combining those things, I think I'll go back on the negative just for a minute. I believe that we have a shortcoming in industry for those that are being forced or they think that do-it-yourself research is the way to go. Because I fear that do-it-yourself tools get you an answer faster, cheaper. Sometimes you could say better. I'm not sure if we can go better, but maybe some people can say that. We could debate that over beer. But do-it-yourself tools, if you don't understand the behavioral sciences in the first place, the models you should be using, and then how do you incorporate those models into those do-it-yourself tools so we can actually accurately understand somebody's behavior and then predict on the back end, then I think it's limiting. So the fears I have right now are traditional research and then do-it-yourself tools that are very kind of simplistic in their nature. We're getting better because I talked to some of these people who are designing these tools, but they're not really embedded in do-it-yourself tools just yet.
Yeah, nice. So coming back to your area of expertise, where do you see the field of behavioral science-based research moving in the next few years? Potential role for AI in that as well, maybe?
Yeah, there's guys like we got to talk about AI, right? Because we're all in business, right? So we're all hearing the power of AI.
GPT.
I know it's coming. It's coming. Actually, no lie. I had my kid here today, and he had to come up with a resume. Right? He's 13. He had to come up with a resume. He has to get what's the resume of a CEO? I go, why don't we ask ChatGPT to tell me the resume of a CEO? And it just created this great resume. It was awesome. We tweaked it, but it was amazing. So it helped him get his homework done pretty quick.
And I'm assuming it looked exactly like yours.
ChatGPT never replicate what I do. It did have some elements of behavioral and science in it. Here's what I think, or here's what I hope. And I know you could probably next week, if you have a data analytics person, they're going to tell you a totally different future, right? I totally get it. Here's what I hope is the future. Right now, I think marketing research, and we've been in this space for the better part of 80 years, that we have great tools. We're getting better all the time at predicting an outcome, like predicting what people are going to do, and then recommending solutions. Now, we have better ways of doing it than we used to. We have implicit association. We have even some of my techniques are great at predicting, trying to understand why, right? Here's why they're doing what they do, and let's go make a prediction. That is today. What I would hope that we're going to do, I think artificial intelligence will allow us to do this. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to describe that. It is allowing us to do it because I'm using it right now to do this. And I'm no AI guy, right? But I am using off-the-shelf tools to do this. We're going to move from this idea that our roles are to predict and understand and provide insights to our brand leads to they're going to start asking us, because we are the ones who drive top-line revenue growth. They're going to ask us, I want a suggestion from you. I don't want an insights like we recommend that you put more emotional marketing. Like they're going to say, I want you to suggest to me what the words should look like. I want you to suggest to me what the visuals should look like on this digital ad, on my landing page, on my packaging design. And I believe that artificial intelligence allows us to make really good suggestions. Not yet, but if we start creating our own models, imagine if you're a packaging research company out there right now and you're doing hundreds of thousands of tests over the course of 20 years, whatever. You have a normative database that you can now use artificial intelligence to model all that data to tell you what are 5 significant aspects of a piece of packaging that will drive sales. You have that data, and artificial intelligence will be able to identify those patterns for you. Logo goes in the top right-hand corner. Price goes in the bottom left. Don't follow that. I have no idea if that's true, by the way, you guys. Don't follow that, but it'll tell you that stuff. So it's going to get good suggestions. Suggesting solutions are awesome. Here's where I also think the AI is going to get us to. Why in the world, if I have all this data on human behavior, it's all being collected every day on all of our behaviors, it's being modeled, the mathematics have caught up to all the data. I will go from suggestions as a marketing researcher. I will give you insights. I will suggest, use a picture kind of like this. Use words that are like this. Eventually, I will press a button. It will design the packaging for me. Why in the world would I ever go to a designer who may one day be working on feminine care and the next week they're working on beer? Why would I go to that person to design packaging for me or a digital ad when I have so much data out there that's based upon real behaviors that I can have modeled out to say, here's what I want to do. I know the psychological mind state of my customer. They desire more security. They're in a cautious state of mind. Therefore, they need to see these types of images. I will press a button. I will have generative AI create that digital ad for me. That is not that far away. Like, it's not that far away. There are companies right now, I'm sure, that are doing it. I know in packaging, I heard about one just yesterday. I think that will be the future of research. We won't be held accountable just to insights. We will have to be giving much greater specific recommendations or suggestions. And I believe in one day that design work could literally sit in our hands because we have all access to this data. Now, will we take advantage of that? I don't know. As an industry, do I think we want to go in that space? I'm not sure. I don't see a lot of researchers really desiring to go in that space. I believe that will have the most impact. I want a CEO to come to me, not the marketer, one day and say, I need an incremental 10% in the Midwest today. I want you to create a quick ad campaign with the correct promotional offer. And I need to start seeing those results tomorrow. And I want to be able to hit a button and takes all this data and all this psychology, puts it all together, launches that ad, and the next day we're starting to see revenue growth coming. I want Insights to own that space. I don't want anybody else to own it because I think we are uniquely qualified to do that. But we got to step into that role. That's the unfortunate part of it.
Yeah, and it definitely does sound like agile go-to-market anyway, doesn't it? So
very agile
go-to-market.
Imagine that. Very agile.
And something just sprung to mind with the whole generative AI. I do wonder if the movie The Princess Bride was onto something quite early. The Six-Fingered Man. We've all seen the AI generated models, so well ahead of its time.
Yeah, I just saw one last night, and the guy was actually bragging about how good he thought he got it, and the fingers looked like 2 times the right length, and the fingernails were. It was very awkward. It was very awkward.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Very cool. So if I can recap what we've talked about today, so using behavioral science to psychologically restage brands is really going to set us up for exponential growth. And it can do that by when we understand the mind states of what our consumers are in, when they're in the moment, needing to make decisions as consumers, as people, etc. The more that market researchers can get in and grapple with that, understand that, and then pass that kind of information on to other parts of the business, the better we'll all be, not just from a business perspective, but from us as a consumer as well. We'll all be far better served by the brands around us as well. So that's always an important thing to remember, that that the customer, the person, is the most important thing in this whole process. I mean, what you've talked about today, it's a whole lot of fun. Like when you're doing it right, when you're seeing all of the stuff just ticking off, the return on investment, I guess, is pretty close, pretty clear as well. So it's a win for us and a win for consumers, as I've just said. We touched on what behavioral science actually is and means, so thank you for sharing that. We had a look at some of the reasons why the industry is potentially broken. We also looked at some of the positives as well, and what the two can learn from each other. And you also shared a little bit about the where the field of behavioral science is going from a research perspective anyway, the role of AI, and how we as market researchers and businesses can use technology in a way to help rapidly iterate our offerings to the public as well. So for those of us that do choose to embrace, there's a pretty exciting future for us, and you've given us some great insights, Will, on what that could look like. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And did you have anything you wanted to finish with or just leave with the audience today?
No, I would just say that, if you found this inspiring in any way, like whether it's, just understanding behavioral science or knowing how it impacts your business, like there are lots of great places you can go to learn more. I've got a website, mindstategroup.com, and then there's a tab called resources. And under that resources page, I actually have so I teach this to my students. I have like 3 pages of resources, books you should be reading, podcasts you should be listening to, blogs you should subscribe to. So if you want to learn more about that, go to mindstategroup.com and look at the resources page. And then there's a document there you can download for free.
Very cool. Thank you. Well, I'll be sure to check it out as well. Sure. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it, Michael. And anytime you want to talk about behavioral science, I'd love to be back on the show. I had a great time.
Will do. Thank you also for everyone who listened in today. And if you have liked what you've heard, feel free to subscribe to the podcast, share it with others. Plenty of useful information and thoughts from Will. Also, feel free to leave a review on the show as well. And be sure to check out mindstategroup.com as well. So thank you so much. And thank you for listening to Now That's Significant.